Imagine owing the federal government $32 million. dollars.
Oh, man. That's panic attack territory right there.
Right. I mean, federal agents are literally seizing your properties, your bank accounts are completely frozen, and your entire financial existence is just being dismantled piece by piece.
Most people would just, declare bankruptcy immediately or hire an absolute army of corporate lawyers and hide.
Exactly. But what if your strategy to pay off the United States government was an acoustic guitar?
That sounds like a joke, but yeah.
It's completely wild. And since today is March 29, 2026, Willie Hugh Nelson is exactly 1 month away from his 93rd birthday.
Which is incredible in itself.
It really is. And if
Yeah.
you are someone listening to this who is constantly learning, constantly trying to figure out how to navigate rigid systems without losing your soul, you are going to want to hear this.
Oh, absolutely.
Our source material today is this really extensive historical chronicle of Willie's life. And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this just wild transformation.
Yeah, going from absolute rock bottom to a cultural icon.
Right. Like, how does a struggling vacuum cleaner salesman, a guy who literally once slept in a roadside ditch in Oregon out of pure desperation, become the architect of outlaw country?
It's a massive leap.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Willie's life is this masterclass in creative resilience.
For sure.
Think of him like a brilliant tech innovator who gets swallowed up by a slow-moving legacy corporate bureaucracy. If you've ever felt stuck building fax machines when you know you could be building the smartphone, Willie is your guy.
I love that analogy because what's fascinating here isn't just his musical genius, right? I mean, music history is full of prodigies who burn brightly and then just fade away because they can't adapt.
Right, they just burn out.
Exactly. What stands out in these sources is his ability to constantly reinvent himself while maintaining this fierce, almost stubborn authenticity.
Stubborn is definitely a word.
Yeah. He didn't just survive the legacy systems of the music industry. He figured out how to make those massive systems adapt to him.
But, before he could force the system to adapt, he really had to fail at playing by its rules.
Oh, he failed hard.
Yeah, we have to start with the machinery he was trying to fit into. Because before he was the outlaw, he was trying very hard to be a company man.
Just a guy trying to make a living.
Exactly. Growing up in Texas, his early grind was just brutal. He picked cotton alongside his family, which the sources know he absolutely despised.
Can't blame him there.
Right, so to escape the cotton fields, he started playing honky-tonks when he was just 13 years old. And over the ensuing years, he just took any job he could find to survive.
I think the list of his odd jobs is amazing.
Oh, it's wild. He worked as a radio DJ, a bouncer, a saddle maker, a tree trimmer. He even sold Bibles and the Encyclopedia Americana door to door.
Door-to-door encyclopedias. That is a tough gig.
Seriously. And at one point, he was so broke looking for work out in the Pacific Northwest that he actually slept in a roadside ditch before hopping a freight train to Eugene, Oregon.
See, gathering all of those raw, unfiltered human experiences, that built an incredible foundation for a songwriter.
Yeah, you can't fake that kind of perspective.
Exactly. He is accumulating the data of regular, struggling human life.
Yeah.
But he hasn't yet found the right vessel to pour it into, nor the leverage to protect it,
And that lack of leverage becomes incredibly apparent when he finally arrives in Nashville, Tennessee in 1960.
The absolute epicenter of the industry.
Right, the heart of country music. But Willie arrives completely desperate. I mean, he needs cash so badly that he starts selling off the total rights to his own intellectual property for just pennies.
This part always hurts to read.
It's brutal. He
Yeah.
sold a song called Family Bible for $50, and another one called Nightlife for $150.
Which, knowing the long-term royalty value of those copyrights, makes those numbers just staggering.
Oh, totally.
I mean, Nightlife alone went on to be recorded by dozens of major artists. That early desperation really highlights the immense power imbalance between an independent creator and an established corporate machine.
Because the machine always has the cash.
Exactly. The machine has the capital, so it dictates the terms.
And that dynamic creates this bizarre dichotomy during his Nashville years. On one hand, he becomes a massive behind-the-scenes success writing hits for other people.
Oh, yeah, he was a legendary writer.
Right. I mean, he wrote Patsy Cline's Crazy, which became the biggest jukebox hit of all time. The industry absolutely recognized his writing talent.
But his solo career was a different story entirely.
Completely stalled out. He
Yeah.
signed a recording contract with RCA Victor, and the executives there tried to mold him into the prevailing Nashville sound.
And we should probably define what the Nashville sound actually was at that time.
Yeah, please do.
So country music was trying to cross over to mainstream pop audiences, right?
Mm.
Producers were deliberately stripping away the fiddles and the steel guitars.
The traditional stuff.
Right, and they were replacing them with lush string arrangements, smooth background choruses, and these pristine, highly controlled vocal performances. It was basically an assembly line of polish.
And Willie just did not fit on that assembly line at all. The sources mention his jazzy, behind-the-beat phrasing getting totally smothered by all that heavy production.
Smothered is a great word for it.
But I'm looking at this and struggling to understand the mechanics of his failure here. Like, how does the guy who wrote Crazy fail at singing his own songs?
It's a fair question.
Was he just a bad performer back then, or was he a brilliant innovator whose product was just being stuffed into the wrong packaging?
It is entirely a packaging and categorization problem.
Yeah.
Systems, whether they're record labels, tech companies, or academic institutions, they rely on templates.
Right, they need to put you in a box.
Exactly. The Nashville executives had a very specific template for a hit record, and Willie's delivery was a complete anomaly.
Because of that jazz influence.
Yeah, regarding that behind-the-beat tracing, standard country singers would hit the vocal note squarely on the downbeat of the drum. But Willie listened to a lot of jazz, like Frank Sinatra and Django Reinhardt.
Oh, wow, Django Reinhardt?
Yeah, so he would intentionally drag his vocals a fraction of a second late, creating this sense of relaxed tension. To a jazz musician, that's brilliant.
But to a country producer?
To a 1960s Nashville producer trying to make a standardized pop country hit, it sounds like a mistake that needs to be fixed. They literally tried to bury his unique quirks under their lush orchestrations.
And trying to contort himself into that standardized mold took a massive toll on him. I mean, by 1970, his royalties were drying up, his RCA albums were failing, he was going through a divorce, and he was ready to quit the music industry entirely.
He was drowning in that corporate structure.
He really was. Then the universe intervenes.
Yeah.
Just before Christmas in 1970, his ranch in Ridgetop, Tennessee, burns to the ground.
Which is devastating, but also sometimes a catastrophic loss is the only thing that gives you permission to walk away.
A total reset.
Yeah. That fire was a metaphorical and physical clearing of the slate. Playing by Nashville's rules had literally left his career in ashes. It was the ultimate signal that it was time to change the game entirely.
So he abandons the corporate machine. He packs up and moves to Austin, Texas. And Austin, in the early 1970s, is this fascinating open-source ecosystem.
That's whole melting pot.
Yeah, you have the burgeoning hippie culture, the folk scene, local jazz musicians, and traditional country fans all bumping shoulders in the same venues.
Which was really unique for Texas at that time.
Exactly. Willie looks around and realizes these are his people. He stops wearing the clean-cut Nashville suits, lets his hair grow out, and starts blending all of these disparate styles together.
Because Austin provided the psychological safety he needed to experiment. He found an environment that didn't just tolerate his contradictions, it actually celebrated them.
That's a huge shift.
It is. It's the difference between a rigid corporate hierarchy and a startup incubator. The environment dictates the output.
And that new output catches the attention of Atlantic Records, who let him record the album Shotgun Willie. It doesn't sell millions, but critically, it establishes his new sound. Willie even remarked that the album cleared his throat.
He finally found his voice.
Right. But here's where it gets really interesting. The true test of his new philosophy comes when he switches over to Columbia Records.
Oh, this is the turning point.
Willie is coming off some critical buzz, and he has a manager who really understands leverage. They negotiate a contract that gives Willie complete, absolute creative control.
Which was virtually unheard of for a country artist at that time.
Yeah, that just didn't happen, right?
Never. Normally, the label pays for the studio time, their A&R reps oversee the sessions, and the executives have to approve the final master recording before it goes to press.
They control the whole pipeline.
Exactly. But Willie's contract flipped that dynamic completely. He was given a budget to deliver a finished product, and the label had no legal right to alter it whatsoever.
Armed with that contract, Willie goes into this cheap little studio in Texas and records a concept album called Red-Headed Stranger. And it is incredibly sparse.
Almost aggressively sparse.
Yeah, mostly just his voice, his acoustic guitar, and a piano. When he hands the final tapes over to the Columbia executives in New York, they absolutely balk.
They thought he was joking.
Right. They sit in the listening room waiting for those strings and the background singers to kick in, and they just never do. The executives think he has handed them a raw, unfinished demo.
They wanted to send him back to the studio.
Yeah, with a high-priced producer to add all that Nashville polish back on.
But they couldn't touch it.
Nope.
Because he had secured the contractual right to creative control before he ever hit the record button. They were legally bound to release the album exactly as he delivered it. He protected his vision structurally.
And that structural protection paid off immensely. Red-Headed Stranger becomes a monster hit. It spawns his first #1 hit as a singer, Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain.
Such a classic.
And this kicks off the massive cultural wave known as outlaw country. In 1976, he and Waylon Jennings release a compilation album called Wanted, The Outlaws, and it becomes the very first platinum album in the history of country music.
The first one ever. That's
Yeah.
huge.
It is, and it's framed as this sweeping rebellion against the Nashville establishment. But I have to push back on the romanticism of that narrative just a bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
Is outlaw country a genuine, organic, artistic rebellion, or did Willie and Waylon just stumble into one of the greatest marketing rebrands in music history?
That is the core tension of the outlaw movement, honestly. And it is a brilliant synergy of both.
How so?
Well, the music itself, the stripped-down sound, the raw lyrics, the refusal to use studio musicians. That was a genuine, deeply felt, artistic rebellion against overproduction.
The art was real.
Yes, but the packaging of it as outlaw country, complete with wanted posters and cowboy imagery, that was an absolute masterstroke of
It's
marketing.
like selling the rebellion.
Exactly. It gave the audience a narrative to buy into. The underlying lesson for you, the listener, is about the necessity of building operational leverage.
Right.
True creative breakthroughs require stripping away the polish that the so-called experts demand. But an artist also has to build the business leverage to protect that raw product until it actually reaches the audience.
He basically built his own machine.
Exactly.
And with that complete creative freedom came massive wealth and unbelievable cultural influence. But it also brought disastrous financial advice.
Obvious it did.
Which takes us right back to that $32 million IRS bill we started with. Let's dig into the mechanics of what happened in 1990, because this wasn't just a case of Willie forgetting to file a tax return.
Far from it. This was a massive systemic failure of wealth management.
Like historically bad advice.
Right. In the early 1980s, Willie's accounting firm, Price Waterhouse, advised him to invest his skyrocketing income into complex tax shelters.
Oh.
Specifically, they had him investing in cattle and agricultural operations. The mechanism was that high-income earners could buy these herds on paper, generating massive depreciation and operating loss write-offs to basically shield their music royalties from taxes.
So a loophole. But the IRS later scrutinized those specific shelters and ruled that they were abusive and lacked economic substance.
Yeah, they didn't buy it.
So they disallowed the deductions entirely. Suddenly, Willie didn't just owe years of back taxes. He was hit with a mountain of compounding interest and massive financial penalties, totaling $32 million.
Just a staggering amount of money.
The government swooped in and seized almost all of his assets, his homes, his studios, his memorabilia.
It is a catastrophic situation that would end almost any other career.
Absolutely.
But Willie's solution showcases how he applies his outlaw philosophy to institutional crises.
Yeah, he decides to crowdsource his tax debt through his art. He gathers up a collection of unreleased bare-bones acoustic recordings and releases a double album titled The IRS Tapes, Who'll Buy My Memories?
Which is such a great title.
Right. He negotiated a deal where the profits from this specific album went directly into a fund to pay off the government.
Which the IRS actually agreed to?
Yeah. And by 1993, through the album sales and auctioning off some properties, many of which, by the way, were bought by his fans and given back to him, the massive debt was totally cleared.
Using your core competency, literally just a man and his guitar, to dig yourself out of a $32 million hole is a remarkable display of owning your circumstances.
That IRS crisis showcases his entirely unorthodox way of interacting with massive institutions. And you see that exact same refusal to play by institutional rules in his public activism.
Definitely.
As we explore his later decades, if we zoom out and look at his life purely objectively as a cultural study, regardless of where anyone falls on the political spectrum, what's fascinating is how his activism operates as a direct extension of his musical musical philosophy.
Right, he applies the same disregard for standard categorization to his worldview that he applied to his music.
Exactly. And to be clear, we're just impartially reporting what's in the sources here. We're not taking sides or validating any of these stances.
Right, we're just analyzing the actions.
Exactly. So on the agricultural front, Willie co-founds Farm Aid in 1985. And the entire festival was actually inspired by an offhand comment Bob Dylan made from the stage at Live Aid, wondering if some of the money could go to American farmers in danger of losing their farms through mortgage debt.
Bob Dylan just threw that out there.
Yeah, just a passing thought. But Willie took that passing thought and built an entire institution. He has been the president of the board ever since, raising millions to keep family farmers on their land.
That's incredible follow-through.
It is. He's also been a fierce advocate for animal welfare, fighting against horse slaughter and campaigning against the mistreatment of dairy calves. He even created his own brand of biodiesel fuel called Willie.
Willie.
Yeah, made from vegetable oil to promote clean energy and support rural economies.
And his advocacy extends heavily into the realm of drug policy reform, too.
Oh, massively. He is a co-chair of the advisory board for NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws.
Which surprises absolutely no one.
Right. He has openly smoked cannabis for decades, been arrested multiple times for possession, and following legalization in various states, he launched his own commercial cannabis brand, Willie's Reserve.
Turning the lifestyle into a business.
Yeah. But his engagement doesn't stop at agriculture or cannabis. It reaches directly into mainstream politics and social issues. He has endorsed Democratic candidates, like Beto O'Rourke's Senate run in Texas in 2018.
Which, as the sources point out, actually drew some very vocal negative reactions from his more conservative fan base.
It did, and he also released a pro-LGBTQ song in 2006 called Cowboys Are Frequently Secretly Fond of Each Other. He even popularized a pink equal sign logo made out of his signature braids.
Adding to that complexity, he has also voiced views that fall completely outside standard political lines on either side.
Yes, the source material notes that in 2010, during an interview with Larry King, Willie expressed deep doubts about the official story of the September 11th attacks.
Yeah, that was a highly controversial moment.
Very much so. He stated he couldn't believe planes brought down the buildings and attributed the collapse to an implosion. So again, we're not endorsing or condemning any of this, but you have a global icon who champions rural family farmers, advocates for the LGBTQ community, runs his own commercial cannabis brand, and voices 9/11 implosion theories on national television.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what we are observing is a phenomenon of radical transparency.
That's a good way to put it.
Willie Nelson operates entirely on his own internal moral and philosophical compass. He doesn't poll test his opinions with focus groups. He doesn't curate his activism to fit neatly into a predetermined political platform just to please a specific demographic.
He's just Willie.
Right. Whether a listener agrees with him on 0% of his views or 100% of them, his cultural power lies in his absolute refusal to be anything other than exactly who he is at any given moment.
Which is pretty rare today.
Extremely rare. He doesn't conform to audience expectations, which paradoxically makes him highly resilient to public backlash. It is incredibly difficult to cancel or expose a man who is hiding absolutely nothing.
But operating with that level of unfiltered transparency in the public eye is exhausting.
Right.
To survive that kind of exposure and the chaos of things like the IRS raid, you need an anchor.
You need something grounding you.
Exactly. Which brings us to the things he completely refused to lose. During that 1990 government raid when agents were seizing his properties, there was one physical item Willie was absolutely terrified of losing.
The one thing he couldn't part with.
Yeah. He famously said, "When trigger goes, I'll quit."
Trigger being his primary iconic guitar.
Yes, a Martin N20 classical acoustic guitar. He bought it sight unseen for $750 back in 1969, right after a drunk fan stepped on his previous guitar at a show in Texas.
Talk about a happy accident.
Seriously. He named it Trigger after the cowboy star Roy Rogers' famous horse because he figured music was his horse.
That's perfect.
Now, because it's a classical guitar, it doesn't have a plastic pickguard, but Willie plays with a heavy pick. So over the decades, his constant aggressive strumming has worn a massive sweeping hole straight through the front of the wood.
It looks completely battered.
It does. Plus, it has over 100 signatures scratched directly into the finish, a tradition that was started by the musician Leon Russell.
It is literally a living artifact.
So how did he protect it when the federal agents showed up?
This is great. He had his daughter, Lana, sneak into his recording studio before the government agents arrived.
Like a heist.
Basically, she grabbed Trigger, smuggled it out, and shipped it all the way to Maui, where Willie hid it at his manager's house until his tax debt was finally paid off years later.
Wow.
He saved his anchor. But Trigger isn't the only discipline that kept him grounded. Here is a detail from the sources that totally subverts the image of the laid-back, weed-smoking hippie.
I love this part.
Willie Nelson is a highly disciplined martial arts master.
Which sounds like a punchline to a joke, but the dedication is entirely real. It is so real. It started when he was a kid in Texas, ordering jujitsu and judo manuals from the back of Batman comic books.
As one does.
Right. He studied Kung Fu in the 60s, picked up Taekwondo in the 80s where he earned a second-degree black belt, and then spent 20 years rigorously studying a Korean martial art called Gongkwan Yusul.
20 years?
Yeah. And in 2014, at the age of 81, he was awarded a fifth-degree black belt.
At 81. That is amazing.
And because he was touring hundreds of days a year, he developed a completely unorthodox training method. He would practice his martial arts forms in the aisles of his moving tour bus, the Honeysuckle Rose, record himself on videotapes, and mail those tapes to his grandmaster for critique.
Picture that for a moment. An octogenarian country music legend practicing complex martial arts forms on a moving bus rolling down an interstate highway.
It's an incredible mental image.
That is a stunning visual, and it points to a very specific kind of mental resilience.
So, what does this all mean? For you listening right now, I think the battered guitar with the hole in it and the martial arts training on the tour bus point to the exact same truth, which is the quiet, unglamorous power of deliberate practice.
Absolutely.
We look at Willie's longevity touring, writing, and winning Grammys into his 90s, and we assume it's just magic or good genetics or luck, but it's not accidental.
No, it's highly intentional.
It is anchored by daily, repetitive, physical disciplines, picking up that exact same guitar every single day, practicing those exact same martial arts forms. It's those grounded, controllable routines that keep you sane when the world around you, whether it's the music industry executives or the Internal Revenue Service, is in absolute chaos.
That really is the synthesis of Willie Nelson's life. He is a master study in persistence and the compounding returns of knowing exactly who you are.
Yeah, he never wavered.
He survived extreme poverty in his youth. He survived a soul-crushing corporate system that tried to erase his unique phrasing in Nashville. He survived a catastrophic $32 million tax bill.
And all those years on the road.
Exactly. He survived the brutal, compounding physical toll of 7 decades on the road. And he did it all by remaining stubbornly, authentically himself, anchored by his daily craft.
He is the ultimate proof that you don't have to fit the legacy assembly line to build a lasting legacy.
As we always say, knowledge is most valuable when it's applied to your own life. So for the listener, the question becomes, where are you conforming to your own industry's Nashville standards?
That's a great question.
Where are you allowing the unique phrasing of your own ideas to be smothered by the strings and the background noise of corporate expectations? Are you playing the game? Or are you figuring out how to build the leverage to change it?
That is the perfect question to end on, because remember that pivotal moment with the Red-Headed Stranger album?
Yeah, when they thought it was a demo.
Exactly. When the Columbia label executives heard it, they panicked. They thought it was a raw, unfinished demo that desperately needed to be fixed. But it turned out that unpolished, stripped-down truth was exactly what the world was waiting for.
It's powerful stuff.
So I leave you with this final thought to mull over. If you had to strip your own work, your own life, down to the absolute bare essentials, no polish, no hiding behind the machinery, what would it look like? And more importantly, would you have the courage to release it?